Good morning, good morning. And today is day, I believe, 31. And our topic today, or our scripture, is found in Mark chapter 6, verse 38. Let me go ahead and read it to you. Then he said to them, "How many loaves do you have? Go back, or excuse me, go look." And when they said, "Five and two fish." Let me repeat. He said to them, "How many loaves do you have? Go look." And when they found out, they said, "Five and two fish." This is in Mark chapter 6, verse 38. Interesting how our author can find the most interesting things on such a small verse. Well, we know this is this part of the story in which Jesus does the miracle, one of the miracles, and feeds the 5,000. And in this particular verse, he's asking his disciples, what do they have on hand? And of course, this always reminds me of the story of Moses, because Moses at the burning bush gave God reasons why he couldn't go. And God said, "What is it that you have in your hand?" And then we think about the story of Gideon, and God said, "Mighty warrior." And he was like, "Who are you talking to?" And so there's also the story of the widow who was about to have to sell her children into slavery for debt repayment. And the prophet said, "What do you have on hand?" And she had some jars, just a small jar of oil. And so God is notorious from beginning to end for not asking us what we don't have, but for asking us what we do have. One of the things I so have to remind myself about that is that God does not require me to have a gift that I don't have. God does not require me to do anything outside of what I have access to. First of all, I have access to Him, which means that I'm limitless, right? But my natural giftings in themselves and the things that I hold within my hand is what God requires of us to surrender back to Him so that He can multiply it and He can do miraculous things with it. I see so many times in scripture that God does miracles with not out of thin air like that. We're not watching Bewitched. But what we do see is that he takes something that someone already has and he speaks into it, or he works with it. Now, I'm not saying that God doesn't always do that, but on a greater side, we see him working in that way. And so I wonder, as the author did in our devotional book this morning, how much do you have, or what is it that you have in your life? Maybe you're looking for God to do something, and yet you're not happy that He hasn't maybe performed something, or He hasn't done something on your behalf, or He's not led you in the way that you should go. But yet again, we're not using all the things that we have at our disposal on the first hand. So this is an area in which I have to walk a fine line, because I can take off by myself all the time. But when God asks us, "Look, what do you have?" As He said to the disciples, "Go look." And so many times I believe that we say we're waiting on God, and truly God is saying, "No, I'm waiting on you." Because we haven't taken the time to go and look to see what we have. We prefer to complain, as the author says, about what we think we're missing, instead of celebrating what we have and utilizing what we have. And there's scripture that talks about not despising the small things. And so if we look at the widow, she had a small thing of oil, right? Some bottles, and she went to her neighbors and got more bottles. And as she began to pour that oil, it never ended, right? Until she ran out of bottles. And we think of the loaves of bread and the fish, that they were broken and broken and broken. Not only just enough, but more than enough. There were 12 basketfuls picked up. So that's kind of interesting how you can start out with that small amount of loaves and that small amount of fishes and have more when you're done, after you fed 5,000, than when you began. Only in God's mathematical system does that work. So today I want to ask you, what is it that you have? What is it that you can look around and find in your life? What gifts do you have? What do you have at your disposal so that you can use for His kingdom? And maybe you don't know. And so you might have to ask the Lord to help you and to open your eyes to see what He is seeing. Ask Him to align and do the work that you need to do to align yourself with what he has in store for you and what his master plan is. Well, how do you do that? You get into his word. And one of the best ways, I believe, and it's something that we're doing at Believer's House, is we're looking at the gospels. We're finding out exactly what Jesus did and what was his plan and how did he do it. If we're to become like him, then we must study his life. And so he's provided for us to fulfill everything that he has called us to do and everything that he has purposed for us to do. We have the startings of everything that we need within us. It's just that we may not be looking for it and we may not be using what we have. So we need to ask him to open our eyes, to align our thinking with his, and to see what is not as though it is. Because when we look with spiritual eyes, we can see so much more than what we can see with our natural eyes. I love the scripture in Psalms 34, verse 10, that our author shares with us on page 125. Young lions lack for food and go hungry, but those who seek the Lord will not lack any good thing. And that talks about, to me, when we talk about something being young, specifically here in young lions, they go hungry. Sometimes they don't go outside of themselves. Maybe they have a small territory in which they feel comfortable, and they're not mature enough to move out into a larger area to get food. Or maybe they're not looking in the right places because of their immaturity and because they're young. And this is not a judgment against young people, because sometimes young people are more willing to step out than we as older. We become much more guarded and much more, it's important for us to be much more cautious as we get older, we think. And so I love this verse that it says, but those who seek the Lord will not lack any good thing. And so if you're lacking in any way, then it may be because you're not going and looking and you're not seeking him in a way that he would open your spiritual eyes. He would align you with his thinking and he would show you what we're not seeing. So I hope that helps you today. And I loved this devotional this morning. Again, we're looking through the book of working our way through the book Awaken with Priscilla Shirer. God bless you. I'll see you tomorrow.